Hello, and welcome to the curriculum preview for the sixth 6 weeks for science in fourth grade. Today we're going to just briefly talk about the wetland biome part 2, organisms in the environment. So just want to start off with a little bit of a look between 5th 6 weeks and 6th 6 weeks. So this table shows what we covered in Unit 5 and then what we cover in Unit 6. And some of these things overlap a little bit, but some of them are different. So I just kind of wanted to highlight a couple of things. Specifically, when we talk about the life cycles, the 5th 6 weeks was focused mostly on the plant life cycles of radishes and lima beans. And then the 6th 6 weeks, we have that same standard, but this time we're just going to be focusing, well, we're going to be focusing on life cycles of butterflies and beetles, and then we're going to compare those and how those insect life cycles compare with the radish and the lima bean. So this kind of gives you an idea of where you were this 6 weeks and where you're going next 6 weeks. Just a reminder about our little biome poster that we have that helps us understand what your students have had in previous grade levels and what it looks like for your grade level, and then what it will be like in 5th grade. And again, just a reminder that when we are teaching our life science standards, we are going to introduce those and do the explore and the explain using a variety of habitats and environments and biomes, whatever's in STEM scopes and aims. And then the wetland is really going to be a chance for us to just look at the standard once we have it mastered as an application for the elaborate. And we're going to take a look at the pacing guide to help us understand what exactly that means and looks like. So just like last 6 weeks, we have two options for the pacing guide. Option 1 is on the left and option 2 is on the right. This 6 weeks, we have 3 content standards. And if you look at option 1, you'll see that that has been divided up into 3 little mini units for the 6 weeks. So you might not think 3 content standards is very many, but when you look at what we have to really do to have the kids master that standard, it actually takes quite a bit of time. So we're talking about really abstract concepts that can be explored in a variety of ways, like adaptations and how that helps them survive in their particular environment. Well, with that standard, we have to understand the environment and the challenges that that environment shows, as well as adaptations in plants and animals and how it helps them meet their needs. So we're really looking at a pretty sophisticated concept. Additionally, when we talk about 4.10b, we're talking about a brand new concept for students, and that's inherited traits, which is really a pretty tough thing to start to look at when you talk about what's the difference between inherited and learned, and then how does that look like in plants, and what does it look like in animals, and so forth. So when we're looking at these life science standards again, when you're starting to introduce them in the first 3 stages of the 5E, we want to just use a variety of general biomes, whatever's in STEM scopes and aims. Once the students really start to get that mastered, then when we get to elaborate, we can start to look at the wetland. So I've made this little icon of this great blue heron, which is a real common animal in the wetland, just to help you visualize that every mini unit you'll dip into the wetland and take a look at dip into the wetland. I just got my little pun there. What your science standard looks like in the wetland. So let me kind of go back to the example here with 4.10a. When we talk about adaptations and how they help them survive in their environment. Well, the wetland has a pretty specific type of environment that's going to be obviously very wet. So plants and animals are going to have to deal with getting food and shelter and getting their basic needs met in a very wet environment. So what do the adaptations look like that are very special in the wetland compared to perhaps maybe the desert or a grassland and so forth? So option 1 allows you to kind of spiral through the wetland every week or so. Option 2 has all of the standards bundled all together in the first couple of weeks of the 6 weeks, and again using any variety of environments and biomes. And then that opens up a 10-day, about a 2-week unit to do a research project on the wetlands or plants and animals in the wetlands, but anything that can really help the students now take the information they learned in the first part of the 6 weeks and apply it into the wetlands. So that opens up options for you to partner with your reading and writing teacher and doing a nice little integrated block of research for with ELAR and science together, if that's an option, or if you're self-contained, it would open up a nice block of time. So again, just like last 6 weeks, you've got either one of those options, whichever meets your needs. The next couple of slides, I'm just going to quickly go through them. So if you want to pause and take a look at what's on the screen, it just explains that a little bit more in depth if you're not that familiar with how these different options work. So there's a detailed view of option 1, and here's a more detailed view of option 2. Okay, so next I wanted to just kind of highlight some things that I think will be useful for you in the unit overview. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring over Unit 6 overview and point out a couple of things. First of all, I just want to make sure you know the pacing guides that we just looked at are located right up here in the unit overview. And here's our standards. The clarifiers are linked over here to the left. I have bolded parts of the standards that they're recursive standards that are in several units. So which part we're going to be focusing on this unit. So for instance, with tools, these are the tools that we're going to use are the bolded ones. And as I mentioned before, we had 4.10c last 6 weeks, but we focused on radishes and lima beans. And this 6 week, we're going to focus on the insects. Okay. With the guiding questions, I just wanted to point out to you that we have guiding questions on the left and then guiding questions with a wetland application on the right. So again, I'll go back to my example that I used before. What is an adaptation? Well, when your students go through that standard, they should be able to answer all of these questions using the unit vocabulary. With the wetland application, if you're wanting to bring that piece in either as an assessment or to help guide maybe their research or when they're doing the application, here's just a suggestion on how to take that adaptation standard and then focus it in on the wetland. So I've tried to do a little bit of the legwork for you there to help you with that application piece. Okay, and then as always, the approaches to classroom delivery have lots of good guidance for what you need to be focusing on and the depth for these standards. I've added a few new images that I've gotten from STEM Scopes. If they came from a different place, I tried to make sure that I put where I got them from if you want to use those. They're pretty small here, but you can grab those in STEM Scopes or where I have them referenced. And I thought these were especially useful because they were specific to what it says in the standards, where it talks about bird beak adaptations and then leaf types. And then there's some more information here. Just a couple of graphics for our beetle. And they're using a mealworm, which is also known as a darkling beetle, and then butterflies here. So just a couple of images there. Okay, so in the resources, I wanted to really point out where I have moved some things to hopefully make it a little bit more user-friendly for you. So as you know, when you start to look at the resources for STEM Scopes and AIMS, if you look for wetland applications, there's a few, but they're not really obvious. So what I've done is any outside resources that we have that are beyond what we normally use, I've bundled all of those up here in this row that says resources for Elaborate. Wetland activity guides, lessons, and ideas. So these go from very general kind of activity guides that you can pick and pull things from to pretty specific things that would fit with some of the standards. So you can see there's lots of options here. So the great thing about Google is you can just kind of click and take a look through there. I've really tried to clean these up and make sure that there's nothing that really doesn't fit our needs well. So if you especially like some of these or if you don't think that they fit well, I'd love some feedback on that. In addition to, so sorry, I kind of jumped there. In addition to the wetland resources, I've also linked resources that really tightly fit the standard. So for instance, 4.10a, that's the adaptations standard, I did find a few wetland resources that really focus very well. Like for instance, in STEM Scopes, I looked in the intervention guided practice, and it says the practice would work well for a wetland biome. So if you look in there, it's not hard to make that fit in there with that if you're looking for a resource for elaborate. In addition, I've got one here for content connections. Well, it uses adaptations of herons, ducks, and alligators, and those are all wetland connections. So I've really tried to highlight those for you where I have found them. I've kind of scoured through looking. In addition, I've got some other resources, and again, if they're listed here with this standard, that means it's a tight fit with that standard. The resources that are up at the top of the resource page that I just showed you are more general. You kind of have to pick and choose what you want. Also, I just wanted to let you know that I have gone through all the comprehension toolkit, which is a resource that your reading teacher uses, and I've aligned those articles to fit along with our life science units as well. I think that was the main things I wanted to show you. Don't forget that we've got some great resources in the lab. You should have received your coupons by now, and hopefully have those sent in and request that those little guys come soon. Takes a couple of weeks for those to grow. All right, let me kind of pull back over here. All right. Okay, so to just remind you, if you are not sure where to find the unit overview, you can pause the video and this will give you a step-by-step on how to access that. Got lots of great information for you. And then I want to wrap up just with the answer to this question, what does hands-on look like in life science? I get that a lot with conversations with teachers. So really when we talk about life science, anytime we can either bring living things into the classroom or go out onto our campus or on a field trip and find real world examples of what we've been looking at as far as some of our games or lessons that we've done, it's really going to make that impactful for the kids. So these are all pictures from kiddos around our district. Working with some hands-on life science there, and there's some information on the screen. You can pause that and look through that if you'd like. And then here's just another view of some things. Very easy to do. Just pull in some different plants, maybe from home or grow. Of course, you've got your radishes and your lima beans from last 6 weeks. So there's just really a lot of ways to bring this alive to your students. And then finally, I just want to wrap up with a heads up about some changes for the science standards for next year. TEA has chosen science to be the first to go through what's called a streamlining process, and it's really designed to look at the science standards for each grade level, kindergarten all the way through high school, and edit and delete or streamline those standards so that they are aligned a little bit better. And so that's going to be coming into effect in the next year, 2018-2019. There have been some changes at every grade level, and there will be some implication changes perhaps with our scope and sequence, but with our curriculum as well. So I wanted to just kind of give you a heads up about that, and I'm going to let you know where you can find out more about that. As a why, this next picture might be kind of helpful for you to see why such changes might have been needed. This comes from a fifth grade math and science teacher classroom, and what they did was they printed out all of the math standards for the whole year, and that's on the left hand side, and then they print out all of the science standards that need to be covered, and that's on the right hand side. So if you teach math, you know it's pretty tight already with getting through all of those different process skills and content standards, and it's the same with science as well. So there have been some implications at every grade level, and I've been working hard for you over the last 2 years to really make sense of what these are. So there were some things that were in a draft form that were recommended, but we now have the final version, and so I've been working on documents to update that. So the documents that I have for you will look much better than this one. They'll be clear cut and user friendly as always. So let's talk about how you can find out more about that. This screen kind of shows you how you'll know what's up. Basically, if you want to know more about it right now, you're welcome to go to the TEA page and it can tell you about that. But we're also going to have some training in August that's going to be laying everything out that you need to know for your changes and the impact that it has on our district curriculum. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for all you do.